This is Vancouver's most published Muslim newspaper, AlameenPost. We've been around 17 years now, alhamdulillah.
Okay, what are we talking about?
So we're talking about few things. Alhamdulillah, you are a very remarkable story. And for women and sisters, it's a very inspiring story for our community. That alhamdulillah today we have a Muslim minister who's in the cabinet, and also seen through all the ups and downs in life. And mashallah, how your journey has been so far.
Well, assalamu alaikum to your viewers and to your followers, and many thanks to the young lady behind the camera and for you for making time. We're here to support MP Ron McKinnon, who is the Liberal Member of Parliament for Coquitlam and Port Moody Coquitlam. There's an election in 8 weeks, and people like me, ordinary Canadians, get to serve in Parliament because of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, because of our Constitution. And this election, there's a lot at stake. And there are a lot of stories like mine waiting to be written in every community across this country. And there are forces at work that are working really hard to prevent that from happening. I was raised by a single mom. And I went to a place called Peterborough, Ontario, when we moved to Canada, and the community welcomed us with open arms. They showed us the way, they showed us around, they made us feel welcome, like we belong, and that support from our neighbors is what motivated me to run for politics and to give back to my community. And I see people like Ron, for example, who are also motivated because of their love for this country to keep serving. And I really hope that more Muslims, there's a lot of us in Canada, but also more Canadians step up and vote in this really important election, so that more stories like mine and like yours and so many others could be made possible.
What do you think are the hurdles being part of the Muslim community? There's Muslims been here for some time. Majority of the Muslims have been coming after the 1990s and early 2000. Just settling down, is it just basic mortgage payments, and that's why they don't get involved in politics, or is it what's stopping the Muslim community? In the last election, alhamdulillah, we've had a very good turnout.
Yes.
Thanks to Harper for something at
least. I would say it's thanks to organizations like Muslim Vote and volunteers on the ground, but okay. Look, I was in Alberta a couple of weeks ago, and there are Muslims in Alberta who've been there since the 1800s. And Muslims in Canada, just like Muslims around the world, have been contributing to their neighborhoods and countries and communities and making them better places. 9/11, of course, was one of those days that shook the world and changed the way that Muslims are seen and heard and treated. I think that it's legitimate for people to be busy with their day-to-day lives, between getting to work and getting back home and picking up their kids and taking them to after-school programs. There are people looking after their elders and their loved ones, and there's a lot happening in people's lives. I don't think that Muslims who are newer to Canada have always had a positive relationship with governments. Some of the places we've lived, with countries that they've left. Some of the countries we have left, the governments have been the ones persecuting us and harming us. And I also think that not everyone always realizes that one vote makes the difference between having a Canada Child benefit that is deposited into your account every month versus a government that's going to take that back. So the more we have conversations like we did here tonight, the more people like you talk about how important it is for people to vote, the more volunteers show up and get people to go out and vote on election day, the more we're likely to see greater participation from Muslims and from all Canadians.
I know you've been traveling all across Canada, but probably meeting a lot of Muslim organizations. In Muslim organizations, there is a sense of taboo with politics, inviting politicians to mosques. Like we've been in newspaper business for about 17 years. Last 7-8 years, alhamdulillah, things have been slowly turning around. I met with the sister in Toronto who was running against Brother Umar Al-Ghabra. She said she called the mosque, and it's very hard for women in politics to enter masjids and for political purposes. Do you find any difficulties for women, especially? Being man, it's one hurdle to come to the mosque, and then being a sister, entering the mosque for politics.
I've had the privilege of being welcomed in all sorts of places of worship,
Right.
including masjids.
Right.
Our Muslim brothers and our Muslim sisters have been very kind to me, and I can understand that isn't the case for everybody. So my message to the leaders in places of worship, especially to our Muslim brothers and sisters, if for a moment you think that this election and how politics happen does not affect you, I'm afraid to say you are mistaken. The way that Muslims particularly have been othered and stigmatized and discriminated against, the way that the word Islamophobia became a trigger that led to our conservative colleagues fighting hard against our government. I hope you know Iqra Khalid, a young Muslim woman who's a Liberal MP, stood up in the House of Commons to defend it, and what they did to her on social media was painful, but she stood her ground. Prime Minister Trudeau had her back. She was able to get $40+ million for an anti-racism strategy. That's a really good example of how politics and the realities of Muslims are interconnected. And I don't want to go back to the days where, neighbor was pitted against neighbor. I don't want to go back to the days where whether a Canadian was a Canadian and a Canadian was questioned.
Right.
And so open your doors. Do not be afraid. Politics is everywhere. And engaging in democracy is healthy. Create an even playing field if you're afraid of choosing sides, so that everybody has an opportunity to have a couple of minutes at the mic after Friday prayers at your masjid, and then let the people decide. But if we don't engage in the political process, then our needs and our concerns and our aspirations won't be as represented in politics than if we do.
Yeah, we did a survey, like every sort of election year, we hold all candidate meetings in mosques from 2011, alhamdulillah. So mosques have been welcoming us here in BC.
Good.
And we've held quite a few debates. Once we did surveys, we found the top 3 issues, or top 4 issues are usually healthcare, economy, jobs, education, and number 4 is usually like Islamophobia. Right. So how do you see, should Muslims, overall Muslims are minded in all other aspects of Canadian society, but Islamophobia also hits the top 5 issue. So do you think for us, is that a reason to get involved enough?
Yes, but also, like any Canadian, we all want a good future for our kids and grandkids. We all want to make sure that we have a safe roof over our heads, that our water and air and our environment is protected, that we are ready for the jobs of the future, that we're doing our part on the international stage, that we as newcomers to this country know how important it is to be part of the reconciliation with the First Peoples of this land. And getting involved in politics is about making sure that all those things we love about this great country, that we all get to call home, that we protect those, but also that we move forward and we make things better. And what's happening this election is all those things that we love about this country, well, we are at risk of losing hard-won gains and sliding back. And unless people rise and stand up, those issues they care about, whether it's the economy or climate or Islamophobia or housing, they're not going to be addressed. And I really hope that everybody watching, listening, is able to, even if you've never voted, pick up the phone and call your local candidate or Google who your local candidate is, and make sure that on October 21st, you put an X next to somebody's name so that at least you've exercised your right to vote. And when you wake up on October 22nd, you don't regret what has happened. And in fact, you feel like Canada can keep moving forward.
Okay, thank you very much. We need to go. We have a flight to catch.
Thank you so much
thank
for
you.
doing this,
Yeah,
and special shout out to our camera woman. She's rocking it.
especially any message to our young sisters and daughters?
You are the most powerful generation of youth to have ever lived. And every single day we wake up thinking about you and thinking about how we're going to make the world a better place. If you want to get involved in politics, Google who the local candidates are and show up to their office and say, I want to volunteer. And I promise you that you will be met with a lot of love and a lot of hospitality and a lot of excitement because your country needs you.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you.